UD. And now, let's hop over to the UFC. This Saturday night, we have a UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Curtis 2. The two have fought before, but before we get to this main event that's going to go down at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, let's talk about honorable mention fights. So any fights or fighters in particular, Mark, that you think the folks listening and watching should be aware of this weekend?
Yeah, I will say Cynthia Calvillo against Piera Rodriguez is an interesting fight. I think Omar would have definitely called that one out if he was here, so I'll do that for him. And then the one other solid one that we're not going to talk about here just because it's on the prelims is Court McGee and Alex Morono. It's a little bit random to me. It seems like they're at different levels at this point in their career. Morono being the higher level, and I do think he wins, but it's certainly a noteworthy fight where we're very familiar with both guys. So that's a solid prelim banger.
Yeah, also a couple of undefeated prospects up on the card here, making their UFC debut. We have the 14-0 Gene Matsumoto.
Yep.
Another undefeated fighter, Cesar Almeida, 4-0, and Melissa Mullins, 6-0. So we'll see who keeps their O's after this Saturday. But let's start things off with one fight down on the prelims in the women's bantamweight division. Norma Dumont taking on the returning Germaine de Randamie. So Norma, the immortal Dumont, she is the, where's my stats here? She's 33 years old, of course, out of Brazil. I'm not sure if she trains out of Brazil, if she trains in the U.S.
That's a good question.
Down in Brazil. Her pro record stands at 10-2 with 2 submission victories to her name, 8 decision victories. And she's been on one. She's been winning. And she's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Most recently defeating Chelsea Chandler back in July of this past year. Germaine de Randamie, the Iron Lady, the 39-year-old out of Holland. She's 5'9", 72.5-inch reach. Her pro record stands at 10 victories with 4 defeats, with 4 big wins by knockout, another one by submission. With the UFC, she has been 7-2, and she's coming off of a win over Julieta Pena, but that win was back in 2020, Mark.
Yes,
and now,
it was.
After quite the long layoff, she returns to the octagon. So what have the odd makers done with this one? And I want to know your take and your pick.
So they have gone with the youth and the activity and made Norma Dumont the favorite. You have me curious now. I want to see where this opened and if it was the public that pushed it this way. Let's see. No, so it's pretty much stayed just the way it opened. So I guess money's coming in on both sides. Norma Dumont is -175, and Germaine de Randamie is +145 as the underdog. 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach for de Randamie. So she is significantly bigger, especially in the reach. And I got to tell you, man, Germaine de Randamie is a better mixed martial artist than Norma Dumont. I don't really have any doubt about that. I'm a little surprised by these odds. You know, the only doubt, which I guess is what is driving this, is that GDR is 39 years old and she has not fought in 3.5 years, which is certainly a very long time, especially at that age. But if she's still close to herself, I have a hard time seeing how Norma beats her because she's not going to out-wrestle her. It's going to be a striking match. And in a striking match, especially with 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach on her side to work with, de Randamie is going to win. I don't know. We like Norma Dumont on this show, but she's not unbeatable. She got beat by Macy Chasson. And on paper, de Randamie is a much better fighter than Macy Chasson. So I don't know. Maybe I'm believing too much in the past performances and past results of de Randamie, and that time is long past now. Obviously, she left. I'm pretty sure she became a mother. A lot of years of inactivity, so a lot of changes in her life. But the technique to me is just superior. So I'm going to go with Germaine to win UD.
I feel like, I mean, I love your take in a vacuum, but I feel like those life decisions, or not decisions, those life events that have happened to her, motherhood, pregnancy, childbirth.
Yep.
I can't think of too many examples of ladies who have stepped away, had a kid, and come back and still compete at a super high level. Obviously, Mackenzie Dern, I know, is a mom. I can't think of too many. I can't think of a big enough sample size to have any degree of confidence in either direction. So that being said, I lack confidence in Germaine de Randamie. I mean, the layoff in and of itself, but the fact that she took time to go through a pregnancy and a birthing, and obviously, as you and I both alluded to at the beginning of this podcast tonight, the craziness and sleeplessness of raising young kids.
Yes.
No, I'm gonna stay with Norma Dumont, and I'm gonna side with Vegas on this one. Her obviously her youth, and obviously her activity, and she has been looking very good lately. So I'm gonna go with the Brazilian by a unanimous decision for this one. And now we hop up into the main card.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Oops, got rid of that tab. We have opening the main card for this UFC Fight Night at the Apex. We have in the in the lightweight division, Trevor Peek taking on Charlie Campbell. So Trevor Peek, the 29-year-old, fighting out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. His pro record stands at 9-1, and 2-1 under the UFC, coming off of a victory against Muhammad Yahya back in October, and now he steps back into the octagon, taking on the young and impressive Charlie the Cannibal Campbell, the 28-year-old out of New York. He's a Long Islander. He trains out of Longo and Weidman MMA out on Long Island. Listed at 6 feet tall, 72.5-inch reach, and his pro record 8-2. And he is 1-0 thus far in the UFC after losing on Contender Series in a fight that was, I remember that fight. That was very Pat Barry, Czech Congo, the way it played out. Campbell was winning that fight, and he was finding success, and he hurt his opponent very, very badly. And his opponent, with barely any wits about him, fired off, I think, like a straight right hand, and just landed right down the pipe, and it put Charlie out. But he got his opportunity. He came back for his UFC debut. They gave him another chance, and he was very impressive, defeating Alex Reyes this past September. Now he steps back in there for his second fight under the UFC banner against Trevor Peek. Mark, give us those odds and your thoughts and your pick.
All right, so Charlie is the favorite here. He is minus 200. Trevor Peek is plus 165. The size is on Charlie's side. He's 3 inches taller. He'll have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. And it's a little bit of a tough call because Charlie Campbell is probably the more skilled fighter on paper, but Trevor Peek is, the fighter who is more Trevor Peek. So that makes it a 50-50 fight. Yes. I'm torn on whether Campbell is good enough to overcome the craziness and the pace and the pressure that Trevor Peek brings, because it is a weapon. He knows how to use it. But I think I am going to believe that the technique of Campbell is enough. I'm not impressed by either fighter that Trevor Peek has beaten in the UFC thus far. The more credible opponent that he did fight was Chepe Mariscal, who we're actually going to talk about in a little bit, and he did beat Trevor Peek. So I think I'm going to say that Campbell can do that too. And I kind of want to say Campbell can even catch him, because Peek can be pretty sloppy in there, which is, it's almost what he's meaning to do. He's trying to turn everything into a brawl, but I like Campbell. I think he's sharp from what we've seen, and I think he could catch him. I don't know if he finishes him. Peek's never been finished. He has that zombie quality to him, but I think Campbell can at least hurt him a time or two, and I'm going to say Campbell wins a UD.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I have been impressed by Campbell and his striking prowess. I think he got caught on Contender Series. Otherwise, I think it would be a different hype story altogether for him. And I agree. I think Peek is going to try to make it ugly, but I think Campbell's going to be too slick and too wise for that. He's great at keeping his distance. He has great hands. He's an overall great striker, and I think he's going to find a finish. I'm going to give him the TKO in the third round for Campbell. And Long Island,
Nice.
let's go. Let's see. In the heavyweight division, Lukasz Brzeski taking on Valter Walker. What a pair of names on these two gents. And correct me if I'm butchering either one of them.
The Lucas one is like Brzeski or something, but I don't remember what it even is to tell you. Brzeski, it might be
Brzeski or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with that for now. The Bull Brzeski out of Poland. He's 31 years old. His pro record 8-4-1 with 1 no contest. Looking for his very first UFC win. He's been 0-3 thus far in the UFC, so this might be his last chance. He lost to Martin Buday, Carl Williams, and most recently Waldo Cortez Acosta back in August. Standing across from the Brazilian, Valter Walker. Jesus Christ. Is that a real name? His nickname is even better. The Clean Monster. Drug test this man right now.
Which is funny because he looks like a fucking animal.
That's why he named himself that, the Clean Monster.
Yeah. It's like me? I'm definitely clean. It's in my name.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know who he is, by the way?
Who he is? No.
He's Johnny Walker's brother.
Oh, is he really?
Yes. From Russia, which I don't even understand how that is the case, but he is Johnny Walker's brother. Like
his biological brother?
Yes. I guess maybe he just moved to Russia and now his shit says fighting out of Russia.
Let's see. Yes. On Tapology, it says he's born in Brazil, fighting out of Moscow, Russia.
There you go.
Wow. But his name is Valter with a V. It's so strange.
It's super weird.
Okay, anyway. So just like his brother Johnny, he is a giant. Valter stands at 6'6", has an 81-inch reach, and he's an undefeated pro mark coming into this Saturday night. He's 11-0. Let's see. 6 wins by knockout, one other one by submission. And thus far, this is his UFC debut, Mark. So what did Vegas do with this Walker brother?
So he's a pretty big favorite. He's minus 310, and Brzeski is plus 250. 2 inches of height and 3 inches of reach for Walker. And I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time breaking this fight down. It's kind of a random main card fight. I guess they wanted to showcase Walker here, but Brzeski is 0-3 in the UFC to this point. It's definitely a little bit random. And I can't say I've been impressed with Brzeski in any of those three thus far. So even though I don't know Walker all that well, I know he's 11-0. I've seen some highlights. He's a beast physically. Obviously, he's the brother of Johnny, as we said, so that has to count for at least something. I'm gonna roll with him. He's got 4 straight finishes by knockout. We just saw Brzeski finished in his last fight, so I will say it happens again. I'll go round 2 TKO for Valter Walker.
Yeah, this is a sure pick, a sure fight. 2 big heavyweights. You're totally right. It's a pretty random main card location here for this fight. But I will roll with the giant, clean monster Brazilian. I'll say knockout round 1 for Valter Walker. You can't make this up, man. You can't make this up with some of these guys.
No.
Okay, here we go. A little bit more of a typical, more expected main card fight for this kind of fight night. Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Christos Giagos. So here we go. Bahamondes is the 26-year-old fighting out of Chicago, Illinois by way of Santiago, Chile. A professional record, 14 victories with 5 defeats. Under the UFC banner, he is now 3-2 coming into this weekend. After winning on Contender Series, he lost his UFC debut against John Makdessi, then rattled off a 3-fight win streak, which was snapped most recently by Ludovic Klein back in August. And now he steps back into the octagon against the Spartan, Christos Giagos. Am I saying that right? Giagos?
I think it's just Giagos. I don't think he says the G,
Giagos.
if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. Fighting out of Hawthorne, California. He is a California native. His pro record, 20 victories and 11 defeats, with 8 big wins coming by way of knockout. Add another 4 finishes by submission, and he is looking to even his UFC record, which right now is 6-7. So a win this weekend would even him in the UFC at 7-7, Mark. So give us your thoughts, Mark, and your take.
All right, so this is the last of the wider odd fights on this card. Bahamondes is a minus 330 favorite. Giagos is plus 260. Big size for Bahamondes, as he almost always has. In this one, he'll be 5 inches taller. He'll have a 4-inch reach advantage. And, Giagos is not an easy night for anyone. He's a guy who will make you earn it in there. He doesn't go away, but when I say he doesn't go away, I mean like in terms of his push, and he won't quit in there. He can get finished though, and he has been finished in 3 of his last 4. And he's fighting a guy in Bahamondes who is dangerous everywhere and who's going to be much bigger than him. So I think that's where this one ends up. It's interesting because Ignacio has lost to both of the more proven names that he's fought in John McDessie and Ludovic Klein. His wins are not over anyone too proven, but I think we've seen enough from him, from what he's shown in those wins, for me to trust him over Giagos. I think he can play the range game. I think he starts to land more and more as he gets the range down. Giagos will try to wrestle for sure. He's going to have to counter that and maybe get up a time or two, but I think the size will help. And I think eventually he starts to hurt Giagos and finishes. I could see him finish with strikes or with a club and sub, honestly, but I'll go round 2 TKO for Ignacio.
Yeah, I'm a big Bahamondes fan, man. I think he's really impressive, and I think he's really a guy to watch here in the UFC in his weight class at lightweight. So I'm going to go with him. I agree. I'm going to think he's going to finish this fight, and I think that he is going to knock out Giagos. I'll say in the first round for Bahamondes.
Yes.
Okay. The guy that you just, alluded to, Morgan, how do you say his last name, this French guy?
Carriere.
Carriere taking on Chepe Mariscal, or Chepe? Yeah. Chepe Mariscal in the featherweight division. So, Carriere, the last pirate, the 28-year-old, originally from Poissy, France. He trains out of France. His pro record, 19-9 and 1 draw, with 11 wins by knockout. Add another 3 submission victories to that. He won his UFC debut, and now he steps back into the octagon against Chepe Mariscal, 31 years old, fighting out of Denver, Colorado. His professional record, 15 victories with 6 defeats, 2-0 now under the UFC. And now he faces off with Carriere from France. Mark, give us your thoughts and those odds.
So this one is nearly a pick 'em. Carriere is minus 125. Mariscal is plus 105. So very tight. The reach is identical. 1 inch of height for Morgan. This is a tricky fight to pick just because of how gritty and tough and undeterred Chepe Mariscal has been by seemingly anyone to this point. But I loved Morgan Carriere in his debut. The kicking game is a real weapon for him, and I think that'll be a key here because I think he can use those kicks to keep his range, to help him to avoid a slugfest with Chepe, to help keep that pressure of Chepe off him a bit, and just win this one behind his technique. He's a finisher. He showed that in his debut against Zucchini, and I could see it take a bit longer here because, like I said, Chepe is a dog, and he's going to bring it in there. But I think he can get him too. So I will say late round 2 TKO for Morgan Carriere.
I like it, and I agree. I too was very impressed by his kicking game in his debut a little while back, and I'm excited to see him back here in here, man. And I think at featherweight he is going to be some real new blood here. I think Chepe Mariscal is a great test for him, given his toughness. But I'm going to be looking for Carriere to get another finish. I'm going to say round 2 knockout for Carriere. More talent out of France. I feel like there were many, many years where there was like almost nobody from France.
Yeah. Oh,
Now
yeah.
we have a bit of a crop.
The fact that they legalized it, I feel like, has created a bit of a boom.
Sure. Okay, we hop up to, we're staying in the featherweight division for a fun one, man, between Alexander Hernandez and Damon Jackson. So Hernandez, the great ape, 31 years old, fighting out of San Antonio, Texas, a professional record consisting of 14 victories with 7 defeats. Under the UFC, he is an even 6-6. And he's coming off of a decision loss to Bill Algeo after going 9-1 as a pro. He lost to Donald Cowboy Cerrone in what was his newest, biggest high-profile fight of his career up to that point. And he talked a lot of shit to Cowboy, who then schooled him within 2 rounds. And it has been up and down for Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez ever since. But he's looking to right the ship again this weekend against Damon the Leech Jackson, 35 years old, fighting out of Dallas, Texas. His professional record consisting of 22 victories with 6 defeats and 1 draw and 1 no contest. Under the UFC, he is 5-4 with 1 draw and 1 no contest. And he is a submission threat, Mark. Out of his 22 victories, 15 have come by way of submission. But he, too, is looking to get back into the win column after losing back-to-back fights to Dan Ige and Billy Q. So here we go, Mark. We have Jackson, we have Hernandez going down at featherweight, which also bearing in mind, new weight class for Alexander Hernandez, relatively new, because he fought at lightweight for a while. Okay, Mark, give us your take and your pick and the odds, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to see these guys both get a co-main spotlight. Pretty cool spot for them here. Hernandez is the favorite. He's minus 200. Jackson is plus 165 on the other end. Jackson is 2 inches taller, but Hernandez will have the 1-inch reach advantage. And I see this as a matchup where Alexander Hernandez could potentially shine. Damon Jackson is talented, of course. You know, you always got to be wary of not allowing him into an advantageous grappling position because it could end quickly. But I think Hernandez is going to be a tough puzzle for him because I see Hernandez as being the faster fighter, the stronger fighter. He hits harder. He's the better athlete. And I don't think he's going to be an easy guy for Jackson to drag down or to hold down. Hernandez has pretty solid takedown D. He can scramble up if needed. And I really just think he can force most of this fight into being a striking affair. And I actually think we could see a KO from Hernandez here, which has kind of escaped him for a while after having some early in his career. And it's tough because Jackson just did take a lot from Billy Q in his last fight and stayed in there. But Billy Q doesn't really carry power like that, whereas Hernandez does. And I think Hernandez is due for one. So, like I said, it could be tricky. The risk of a submission fighting Damon Jackson always exists, but I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez to find that knockout, and I will say he gets it in round 2.
So Hernandez has only been submitted once in his pro career. That was by Renato Moicano back in 2022, February of 2022. It was a rear naked choke. I believe it was kind of a club and sub situation, but Renato Moicano carries way more firepower, in my opinion, than does a Damon Jackson. So I don't know if Damon Jackson is going to be able to get Alexander Hernandez in that kind of hurt position to the point where he can wrap him up and find a submission. Of course, he's a different kind of a submission threat than a Renato Moicano. But I agree. And I'm picking with you again. I'm going to take Hernandez. I still want to like Alexander Hernandez. I feel like a bunch of his losses, I'm like, God damn. For some reason, I like him. I'm a fan, and I like his fighting style. I just feel like a number of fights just haven't gone his way. But this one, I think, very much could. I don't think Jackson has enough firepower coming Hernandez's way to be a difference maker in this fight. And I think Hernandez, I hope he's well-rounded enough to keep that submission threat at bay. Give me Hernandez by decision. Please, God. Okay, main event time. UFC Fight Night. Allen versus Curtis 2. Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis once again. Here we go. Let me cue this up. So we have Brendan all in Allen, the 28-year-old fighting out of Covington, Louisiana. His professional record, 23 victories and 5 defeats. Of his 23 wins, 5 have been knockouts and 14 have come by way of submission. With the UFC, he's 11-2 after winning on Contender Series. And he's coming off of a win against the very dangerous fellow submission fighter in Paul Craig. And Brendan Allen, Mark, is riding a 6-fight win streak coming into this weekend, taking on Chris Curtis once again. Chris Curtis, the 36-year-old, fighting out of Las Vegas, Nevada, out of Extreme Couture. Under the UFC, he is 5-2 with 1 no contest. He has a little bit of PFL experience as well. And he's coming off of a split decision victory against Marc-Andre Barrio in January of this year. And he's right back in the octagon. As I mentioned, this is a rematch. The two fought in December of 2021, so sort of in the middle tail end of the pandemic. And Chris Curtis got the better of that fight, defeating Brendan Allen by TKO with knees and punches. In fact, that was Brendan Allen's last loss after this win streak. So he's looking to right that ship and get that one back, Mark. So, Mark, give us the odds and your thoughts and your pick.
Yeah, just quick. This one was supposed to be Brendan Allen against Marvin Vettori, which I was really pumped for.
Oh, that's right.
I can't remember when that was that Vettori. I think it was only maybe 2 weeks or less. I don't think it was much longer ago than that. So pretty short notice that Curtis has jumped in here. Not a bad consolation prize for Brendan Allen to try to get that loss back. I'm sure that loss bothers him. So, he loses the huge fight, but at least he gets this one that I'm sure intrigues him. He is favored here. He's minus 210, he being Brendan Allen. Chris Curtis is plus 170. 4 inches of height for Allen, but actually a half-inch reach advantage for Chris Curtis. It's an interesting fight because on paper, honestly, Chris Curtis is a tough matchup for Brendan Allen. And of course, we already know he can beat him because he did just that 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, whatever it was. But the reason I say he's tough is because he's not easy to take down. He pressures and he rips the body. And all of those things are things that are potentially issues for Brendan Allen at different times in his career. And, as dominant as he has been, if he's not able to everyone that he has beat on this stretch is someone he's been able to take down. If he's not able to take Chris down, things could get pretty interesting here. But you got to remember that even though he did get finished in the first fight, he took Chris down. He managed to do it in that fight. He's one of the few who have. He even had a submission attempt in there. And yes, he got caught, but this Brendan Allen is levels above that Brendan Allen. I really believe that Brendan Allen has evolved significantly since that fight in every way. Whereas Chris is basically the same guy, in my opinion. I just think Brendan has become so much more comfortable with how his game works and how it blends together. You used to see him thinking in there more, and now it's just so natural. The jiu-jitsu has reached just absurd levels. And I'm going to trust that. I'm going to trust that development. That's the differentiator for me. Also, Allen is 8 years younger than Chris Curtis. He's 28 now, as opposed to being 25 the first time they met, which was pretty young. He's in his physical prime now. So, there may be someone out there who can stop Brendan Allen as he keeps climbing here. But I just don't think Chris Curtis in the year 2024 is that guy. So there could be some tricky spots. He may certainly have to eat a body shot or two en route to getting this W. But I think Brendan Allen can get Chris Curtis down, and I think he can do it more than once. And Chris has only been subbed one time in his whole career. But give me Brendan Allen to make it 2. I think he is that slick, and I will take him to win by submission in round 3.
Like it. The thing that I like most that you said is that you're trusting the development of Brendan Allen, and I could not agree more. His last few fights, man, he has just been unconscious. I mean that in the best way.
Yeah,
obviously, he's just flowing. And he has a disturbing degree of like calmness.
Yep.
In the octagon. I mean, what he did to Paul Craig was just unsettling for a guy who is so good in Paul Craig. For he looked like he was like sparring, like he was training. Like he was like, "Hey guys," he's like, "Hey family at home. Love you, baby. See you soon. I'm going to go fuck this guy up." Really, really calmly.
Yeah.
He did, dude. Even in the fight, he was so calm.
Yeah. I agree.
That being said, the fact that these two fought before and Chris Curtis finished him does complicate things. I think Chris Curtis is a ridiculously well-rounded and talented mixed martial artist. But yeah, that being said, I think that Brendan Allen evens this series at 1 apiece, and I'm less confident in you in the submission win for Brendan Allen because Chris Curtis is so well-rounded. He's only ever been submitted once. I think his stature helps with that. He's a very compact middleweight.
Yeah.
But I'll go with Brendan Allen in 5 rounds. I'll go with Brendan Allen by UD, and there